My wife and half-brother had a child behind my back. When I refused to fund their mess, my mother showed up at my work screaming that I was destroying the family. The first time I saw Reed again, it was a Wednesday afternoon. His name popped up in my inbox like a ghost. Hope you're well. Mom and Dad want to reconnect. So do I. I stared at the message for a while before opening it. I hadn't talked to him in almost 6 years. Not since the fight. Not since he called me bitter and ungrateful for misinterpreting our parents' love. That was the word he used. Misinterpreting. My name's Omar. I'm 36 years old and live in Pittsburgh with my wife, Yasmin. I work as a senior robotics technician for a biomedical firm. It's a job I love, though it comes with long hours and a lot of lab time. I've always preferred machines to people. Machines at least don't lie to you. Reed's message was short. Polite. Too polite. Said he wanted to meet for lunch. Said our parents had been doing some thinking and maybe it was time to heal old wounds. I almost deleted it. But Yasmin read it over my shoulder and said something that stuck. You'll never know if they've changed unless you let them show you. So I said yes. We met the next Saturday at a small sandwich shop near the river. Reed was already there when I arrived, pressed shirt, perfect posture, same smug half-smile I remembered from our childhood. I hadn't even sat down before he reached across the table and clapped my shoulder like we were long-lost war buddies. Omar, he grinned, damn, man, you look good. Like a real adult. It was a weird thing to say, but I let it go. We talked for almost 2 hours. Mostly small stuff at first. His job, real estate now. My work. He asked about Yasmin. He mentioned our parents with careful words, like he didn't want to spook me. I could tell he was trying. Or maybe he was performing. I couldn't tell the difference yet, but I wanted it to be real. I'd spent years building walls around myself, around Yasmin, trying to protect what little I had from the emotional erosion my family specialized in. But now here was Reed, offering an olive branch. I let myself believe it. A couple weeks later, he came over for dinner. Yasmin cooked lentil stew and made fresh flatbread. Reed brought a bottle of wine and flowers, actual flowers, which he handed to her with a big showy smile. Thanks for welcoming me, he said. This means more than you know. Yasmin smiled politely, but I could tell she was watching him. She has this way of reading people that I've never fully understood. She's a digital artist with a growing online following, mostly illustration commissions and abstract prints. The kind of person who sees layers in people that I miss. Over the next month, Reed came by more often. Sometimes when I was home, sometimes when I wasn't. He said our parents were asking about us a lot. That they regretted how things had gone. It was strange but not unpleasant. We even laughed about our childhood a few times. Told old stories. Played some vintage video games together, like we used to. I ignored the small things. Like how Reed never apologized directly. Or how he asked Yasmin a little too often about her work, complimented her art like he was trying to impress her. Or how he'd show up even when I told him I was working late. I wanted reconciliation more than I wanted clarity. And that was my first mistake. At first, I chalked it up to coincidence. Reed showing up right when I was heading out the door for the lab? No big deal. Yasmin letting him in with a smile? She was just being kind. That's who she was. But it kept happening. He started dropping by on weekday evenings, always just after I'd left or right before I came home. One time, I ran back in because I forgot my badge and found him sitting on the couch with a mug of tea, laughing at something Yasmin was showing him on her tablet. Thought you already left, Reed said, not missing a beat. Yasmin was just showing me this wild piece she's working on. You've seen her new stuff, right? It's incredible. Yasmin looked up, almost startled. You left your badge? I nodded, grabbed it off the counter, and left again, but not before something in my stomach turned. I told myself it was nothing. But over the next few weeks, that feeling grew. Reed started making comments that felt off. One evening, while I was finishing up dishes, he said to Yasmin, you know, I read this article that said creative people make better parents. That kids raised around art tend to be more emotionally intelligent. Yasmin chuckled politely, drying her hands. Let's hope so. Then Reed looked at me. You guys ever talk about kids? The sponge in my hand froze. I said, not really your business, is it? Reed held up his hands, grinning. Hey, just making conversation. Yasmin gave me a quick glance, the kind that said, let it go. So I did. But it kept getting worse. He started referring to my lab as my clean little science bunker. Said things like, man, I don't know how you stare at wires and code all day. Feels so sterile. Like it's the opposite of life, you know? Once, when I mentioned we were short-staffed and I'd be working even later that week, Reed leaned back and said, well, somebody's got to bring home the future babies, right? That night, I told Yasmin I thought he was pushing boundaries. She shrugged. He's just being Reed. He's trying. And I think it's sweet that he takes an interest in my work. Honestly, it's refreshing. That word stung. Refreshing. I let it go again. Then Yasmin sat me down one Saturday morning, her hand shaking slightly, and said, I'm pregnant. The world shifted. I pulled her into a hug. I laughed. I cried. We talked about it, sure, but we hadn't been trying, not officially. Still, it felt like the best kind of accident. But when I told Reed the following day, something in his face flickered. Not joy. Not surprise. Something darker. Something possessive. He hugged Yasmin a little too long. Said, "Wow, that's big. Really big. This kid's going to be lucky." Then he turned to me and said, "You ready for that kind of responsibility? Real life's about to start, little brother." I smiled, but my hands curled into fists behind my back. I couldn't name it yet, but something was wrong. Very wrong. It was almost midnight when I opened Yasmin's laptop. I wasn't looking for trouble. I wasn't snooping, at least that's what I told myself. She'd left it on the kitchen table, screen half shut, still glowing. I was locking up for the night, lights off, the house quiet. Then I saw the preview of a message in the corner. A name. Reed. I hesitated. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I could have walked away. I should have. But I didn't. I clicked. At first, it was just a thread of messages. Innocent enough. Memes, old inside jokes, links to art blogs. But then I scrolled back. Farther. Weeks back. Months. That's when I saw it. A photo she had sent him, one of her in the studio, shirt lifted, paint smudged on her stomach. "Don't show anyone," she'd written. Then his reply, "Beautiful. Still blows my mind, you're mine." Mine. I froze. I scrolled faster, heart thudding. My hands were shaking. There were dozens of messages, some flirty, others unmistakably explicit. They'd been talking late at night when I thought she was sketching. They'd even joked about me. "Do you think he'll ever notice?" Reed had written once. Yasmin had replied, "He doesn't see what's right in front of him. He sees wires and numbers." That's all. I wanted to throw the laptop across the room. Instead, I kept reading. The final blow was in a message dated 3 weeks ago. "Reed, once the baby's here, we'll tell him. He'll understand eventually. He always tries to be the bigger man. Yasmin, he deserves to know. But I can't do this while I'm still pregnant. One thing at a time." I closed the laptop slowly, hands clenched. My breath came in shallow gulps. The baby was his. It made sense now, the way Reed looked at her, the strange confidence in his voice when he talked about the next chapter, the passive comments about fatherhood, about me being too sterile or too busy. I walked into the bedroom like a sleepwalker. Yasmin was curled up, already asleep, one arm over her stomach. "Yasmin," I said quietly. She stirred. I turned on the light. She sat up slowly, squinting. "What's wrong?" I held the laptop in both hands. "I read the messages." She blinked. "What?" "Between you and Reed," I said, my voice barely steady. "All of them." Her face drained of color. She didn't deny it. Didn't lie. Just sat there, mouth slightly open, eyes wide. "How long?" I asked. She swallowed. "Omar." "How long?" She looked down. "Since the summer." At first it was just talking. But then it. "Is it his?" I asked, though I already knew. She nodded once. Her hand moved to her belly. "We were going to tell you," she whispered. "Just not yet. We didn't want to ruin everything." I laughed, loud and bitter. "Ruin everything? You already did. You and your refreshing houseguest." She tried to reach for me. "Please, just..." I stepped back. "Don't." I grabbed my duffel bag from the closet and started stuffing clothes into it, whatever I could reach. I didn't bother folding anything. Didn't care. Yasmin sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, silent now. There was nothing left to say. I walked out of the apartment with one bag and no plan. The hallway was quiet. I heard a neighbor's dog barking faintly through the walls. Outside, the cold hit me like a slap. I didn't look back. Everything I tried to rebuild, my family, my marriage, my trust, had shattered in a single night. The baby wasn't mine. And neither, it seemed, was anything else. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called my parents. Not a text. Not a polite email. An actual phone call. My mother picked up on the second ring. "Omar," she said, her voice tight with surprise. "Is everything okay?" "No," I said. "Not even close." There was a pause. Then, "Is this about Reed?" That told me everything. They knew. Of course they knew. "I just found out Yasmin's baby isn't mine," I said flatly. "It's Reed's. They've been having an affair for months." Another pause. A long one. "Well," she said finally, "I'm sure they didn't mean for it to happen. These things are complicated." I nearly dropped the phone. "Complicated?" I snapped. "You think this is some kind of misunderstanding?" "Sweetheart, I'm saying maybe don't make any drastic decisions. You and Yasmin could still lie." She lied to me. He lied to me. They were planning to tell me after the baby came. Like it was a gift I should be grateful for. She sighed, like I was being unreasonable. "You've always been sensitive, Omar. I just think, for the sake of the family." There it was. The family. I should have known better. But some small, Desperate part of me had still hoped they'd defend me. Support me. Stupid. What about the fact that I opened my home to him? I said. That I tried to make peace with a brother who never lifted a finger for anyone but himself? You told me to give him a chance. And now look what he's done. You always said you wanted to reconnect, she said gently. Isn't this a step forward? You're still brothers. And now there's a child. A new life. My jaw locked. You want me to forgive them. I want you to be the bigger person. For the baby's sake. I ended the call without another word. That afternoon, I filed for divorce. I kept it clean, clinical, straightforward. My lawyer was stunned how calm I was. I didn't feel calm. I just felt hollow. I also stopped by the bank, locked my accounts, and changed the emergency contacts on everything I owned. I even changed the key code to my condo. Yasmin had never asked for her own key. Reed always used the spare. A few days later, the first court documents were served. That's when the smear campaign started. Yasmin accused me of being cold, uninvolved, said I was distant and controlling, that I worked too much, that I didn't support her emotionally. Reed backed her up, of course. Their story was rehearsed, polished, clean. Mine was full of silence and betrayal and things that couldn't be proven with paperwork. In the end, I kept my condo, but I lost a good chunk of my savings. Half my retirement. Some of our joint assets. It didn't matter. They could keep the money. I kept my name. And that was the first line I ever drew where no one dared cross back. A week after the divorce was filed, the messages started. They came from my mother first. Short at first, then frantic. Mom, Reed told us you're freezing him out. That's not healthy, Omar. He's your brother. Mom, Yasmin is struggling. You may not like her, but she's still carrying a child. Your nephew. Mom, don't punish an innocent baby. Help them if you can. I stared at each message like it was written in a language I'd never seen. As if I hadn't been the one betrayed. As if I owed them something. Then came the final one that made my blood run cold. Mom, they're behind on rent. Yasmin can't work much right now. Reed is trying, but please, Omar, just help them get through this month. For the child. For the child. I didn't respond. I deleted every message and went on with my day. 2 mornings later, Reed showed up at my condo. I just finished a run, still sweating, earbuds in. I turned the corner in the lobby and there he was, leaning against the mailboxes like he owned the building. He smiled like we were old friends. Omar, he said, like my name tasted good in his mouth. Thought we could talk. I didn't say a word. Just walked past him toward the elevator. He followed me. Look, he said, hands shoved in his jacket pockets. I get that you're pissed. I would be too. I mean, I didn't expect things to happen this way. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside. He followed me in. But it's been a hell of a couple months, man. We didn't plan this. It just happened. The doors closed. You didn't plan it? I asked, my voice flat. You mean you didn't plan to lie about it? Or you didn't plan to get caught? He gave a sheepish grin. Come on, man. It's not like we tried to hurt you. It was complicated. Yasmin was lonely. You were always at the lab. I turned to face him. You were standing in my building, trying to justify screwing my wife. She wasn't happy, Omar. And that makes it okay? He held up his hands like he was calming a wild animal. I'm just saying, maybe don't burn the whole bridge. We're still family. I laughed. It wasn't pretty. You don't get to use that word. You forfeited it. He sighed, like he was the one exhausted. We're not asking for much. Just a little help to get on our feet. I stared at him. You make a mess, light my life on fire, and then show up here asking me to fund the wreckage. He bristled. It's not like that. No? Then what is it like? He looked around the elevator like he wanted a camera to back him up. Then he said it. The line I'll never forget. It's not about you. It's about the baby. I stepped in close enough that he backed up against the panel. You don't ever show up here again. You don't text me. You don't call. You don't send mom as your messenger. If you do, I will call the police, and I will press charges for harassment. I have all the messages. Don't test me. He blinked. His face changed, like he finally saw me for the first time. The elevator doors opened. I stepped out. Reed didn't follow. When I turned around, he was still standing there, the guilt finally starting to settle, or maybe just the fear that I wasn't going to play the good brother anymore. I walked back to my condo in silence. That was the first time I felt something close to peace. The kind that comes when you stop asking why someone hurt you and start making damn sure they never get the chance to do it again. It was a Thursday morning. My team was wrapping up a firmware update for one of our robotic exoskeleton prototypes. Nothing out of the ordinary. I had just returned from the lab floor when I heard the knock on my office door. Not a light knock. A pounding one. Before I could get up, the door flew open. My mother stood in the doorway, tears streaking down her cheeks, clutching her purse like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Oh my God, she gasped. Omar, how could you do this to your own family? The hallway behind her fell silent. Heads turned from cubicles. I could already feel the weight of every eye in the building swiveling toward my office. I stood up slowly. Mom, you can't be here. She stepped inside anyway, voice rising, wobbling with emotion. You're tearing us apart. Reed is broken. Yasmin's stressed all the time. And the baby, she choked. That poor baby is going to grow up knowing his uncle abandoned him. I walked around my desk, lowering my voice. You need to leave. Now. She didn't move. She clutched her chest like she was seconds from fainting. I raised you to be better than this. To be generous. To be good. I saw one of my co-workers, Julia from Systems, peeking around the hallway corner, phone in hand, probably texting someone. Omar's mom is having a full breakdown in his office. Please, I said, carefully, don't do this here. You're destroying the family, she shrieked. You're acting like some cold stranger. Is this what that job turned you into? Some robot. That stung, more than I wanted to admit. I opened the door wider and motioned down the hall. If you don't leave, I'll have security escort you out. She stared at me, shaking. You'd really do that to your own mother? Yes, I said without hesitation. Because this isn't a family issue. This is harassment. She blinked like I'd slapped her. I'm done letting guilt dictate my life, I added. You've had enough chances. So has Reed. So has Yasmin. That chapter's closed. The tension in the room tightened like a fist. Her lips trembled. I just wanted to talk, she whispered. I just wanted you to listen. I did, I said quietly. For 36 years. A few seconds later, she turned and stormed out. No goodbye, just the fading echo of her heels on tile. When I got back to my desk, Julia had left a sticky note. You okay? I have chocolate if you need it. I smiled faintly and tossed it in the trash. Then I opened my inbox and started writing. To Mom, Dad, Reed, Yasmin. Subject, final boundaries. Body, do not contact me again. Any further attempts, calls, texts, in-person visits, will be considered harassment and dealt with accordingly. This is not anger. This is closure. I wish you peace, but you will not have access to me. Omar. I hit send and sat back in my chair, my hands trembling slightly. It felt like pressing a detonator. Only this time, the explosion cleared the path I should have walked a long time ago. It was the following Friday when he came. I hadn't spoken to my father in over a year, not since before the affair, before the unraveling. His silence throughout everything had been deafening, but familiar. That was always his way. Watch things burn, then step in once the fire had already gutted the house. I had just gotten home from work. I was unlocking my door when I saw the old gray sedan pull up to the curb. I didn't move. The driver's side door opened slowly. My father stepped out, dressed in a too warm brown blazer, the same one he wore to church and funerals. He stood at the edge of the sidewalk, hands in his pockets. Omar, he said, like a man stating the weather. I was hoping you'd be home. I didn't say anything. Just opened the door, stepped inside, and left it half open. He took that as permission. Inside, he looked around like it was his first time seeing my condo. Though he'd been here before, back when Yasmin and I were still playing happy couple. He didn't comment on the place. He never did. I stayed standing. He sat on the arm of the couch, like he didn't plan to stay long. Your mother told me you sent some kind of legal threat. Not a threat, I said. A promise. He nodded like that made sense. She was upset. But she knows you're serious. I waited. Let him get to it. I didn't come here to argue, he said. I came to talk. Calmly. You're not a child. I'm not going to scold you. But I do want to say this. It's time to be a man about this. You need to step up. That word, step up, hit harder than I expected. I let out a quiet breath. Step up for what? For the family, he said. For the child. For Reed. He's still your brother. My voice came out sharper than I intended. He slept with my wife. He made a mistake. My father replied, as if I had just accused Reed of speeding. People make mistakes. Families get through them. I stared at him. What have you done for me? He blinked. What? All my life, I said. What support have you given me? What sacrifices? You praised Reed when he got AB in algebra and said nothing when I built a working prosthetic arm in 10th grade. That's not true. Yes, it is. You always looked at me like I was the backup plan. The quiet one. The one who should just be grateful to be invited. He rubbed his jaw, uncomfortable now. I don't remember things that way. Of course you don't, I said. Because remembering would mean admitting how badly you failed me. So let me remind you. Reed lied. Yasmin lied. You and Mom stood behind them because it was easier than facing the truth that your favorite son destroyed my life, and you helped him do it. He stood, clearly done listening. You're angry, he said. I get it. But you're letting that anger make you cold. You think this is strength? Cutting everyone off? I stepped toward him, voice low. This isn't anger. This is clarity. For the first time in my life, I know what I deserve. And it's not a family that only shows up to ask for money and forgiveness in the same breath. He shook his head. You're going to regret this. I walked to the door and opened it. No, you are. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he walked past, slow and heavy. I watched him go. As he reached the curb, I called out, "Don't come back. If you do, I won't answer the door." He paused, turned halfway, and nodded once. Then he got in the car and drove away. I shut the door behind me and leaned against it, the quiet in the room settling around me like armor. I wasn't alone. I was finally free. 2 weeks later, I got the envelope in the mail. It wasn't a letter from Reed or my parents this time. It came straight from the county courthouse. The kind of envelope you recognize before you even open it. Inside was a motion from Yasmin's lawyer. She was petitioning for an increase in post-divorce financial support. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly predictable. Yasmin, who had already walked away with a decent settlement, who had Reed playing house with her, was now coming back for more. Like I was a bank she forgot to finish robbing. I made a call that night. Time to dust off the folder, I told my attorney. She's back for round 2. He sighed like he'd been expecting this. Let's make sure it's her last. We met later that week and went over everything: messages, financial records, copies of the conversations I had saved from when she and Reed first confessed. I hadn't thrown away any of it. Not out of spite. Just instinct. "This one's clean," he said, flipping through the file. "We can prove she lied, manipulated the timeline of the separation, and misrepresented her financial situation in the original filing." He glanced at me. "We could countersue, you know. Emotional distress. Fraud. I don't want money," I said. "I want her out of my life." A few days later, I got an email. Not from her lawyer, from Reed. Subject: just talk. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. "Omar, I know we're not in a good place right now. I get that. But this thing with Yasmin, she's under a lot of stress. We both are. Maybe we didn't handle things the right way, but can we just talk before court? It doesn't have to be like this. We're family. Always will be. Please don't make this uglier than it has to be." No apology. No ownership. Just a half-hearted attempt to drag me into his mud again. I didn't reply. Instead, I printed it out and handed it to my lawyer. He stapled it to the back of the folder without a word. The day before the hearing, I stood in front of my mirror and adjusted my tie. Clean shave, pressed shirt, steady hands. I hadn't looked this composed in months. Maybe years. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't even about justice. It was about boundaries. Yasmin had crossed hers. Reed never believed I had any. My family thought I was the soft one, the one who would keep taking hits just to keep the peace. But I'd stop being that man. And tomorrow, in court, I'd prove it, not with anger, not with raised voices, but with facts, with evidence, and most importantly, with silence. Because the best part about being done with someone, you no longer owe them your voice. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Not just the temperature, though the AC was cranked up too high, but the air itself. Stiff, staged, like everyone had already picked their lines for a performance nobody wanted to watch. I sat next to my lawyer, hands folded neatly in my lap, watching the double doors swing open. Yasmin walked in first. She wore a pale gray dress, one she probably chose to look neutral, understated, like someone trying to play the part of a composed, wronged woman. She barely looked at me. Behind her, Reed trailed in, suit slightly too sharp, smirk just barely hidden behind his oh-so-concerned expression. They sat at the table opposite us. Yasmin's attorney nodded to mine with the kind of performative politeness lawyers use when they're pretending this isn't just another game. When the judge entered, we all rose. What followed wasn't dramatic. Not at first. Yasmin's lawyer made her case, that the cost of raising a child had increased, that Yasmin's financial needs had grown unexpectedly, and that the original settlement didn't take emotional context into account. He even used the word compassion. That's when my lawyer stood. "Your Honor, we're asking for a reduction." The room stirred. Even Reed sat forward, confused. My lawyer kept going. Calm. Precise. "Not only has my client been subjected to ongoing harassment and manipulation post-divorce, we have substantial evidence that the original agreement was based on misinformation." He handed the judge a folder. The folder. Inside were screenshots of Yasmin and Reed's messages. The timeline showing the affair had begun before the marriage ended. Bank records of Yasmin transferring money to a private account she never disclosed. The email from Reed, trying to guilt me into backing down. The judge flipped through the pages, expression unreadable. Yasmin shifted in her seat. Reed whispered something in her ear. Whatever it was, it didn't help, because the judge looked up and said, "Ms. Kamal, do you dispute any of these materials?" Yasmin hesitated. Her lawyer leaned in. "You don't have to respond." The judge raised an eyebrow. "She does if she wants this motion to proceed." Yasmin opened her mouth, closed it, then quietly, "No, I don't dispute them. The silence that followed felt heavier than any shouting match. The judge nodded, matter of fact. In that case, the court finds that the original settlement was based on bad faith. Yasmin's eyes widened. Reed sat back, stunned. I am not only denying the petition for increased support, the judge continued. I'm reducing the existing support to reflect the revised circumstances. Yasmin gasped. Reed stood up. Your Honor, with respect, this child. The judge cut him off. Mr. Kamal, unless you're a licensed guardian or a party to the case, you do not have standing. Please sit down. He sat. The gavel came down like punctuation on a sentence I'd been writing for months. Court adjourned. I stood slowly, collected my coat, nodded to my lawyer, and turned to leave. As I passed their table, Yasmin looked up at me. Not with hate, not even with anger, with disbelief. Like she still couldn't wrap her head around the fact that I'd followed through, that I hadn't crumbled, that I had, in fact, walked into court, not broken, not pleading, but prepared. And I didn't say a word to either of them. Not because I didn't have something to say, but because they weren't worth hearing it. Outside, the sun was shining. The wind was cool. And for the first time in a very long time, the weight on my chest wasn't mine anymore. I didn't throw a party. I didn't book a trip or post anything online. There was no dramatic announcement that I'd finally won. But something inside me shifted after the courtroom, like an old, rusted bolt that finally broke loose. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee, let the sun pour through the windows without drawing the blinds. I went into my workshop, the one room in the condo that had always been mine, even when everything else felt borrowed or compromised. I picked up a disassembled joint motor from a prototype I'd shelved months ago and started tinkering. That was the beginning. I started staying late at work, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. My coworkers noticed the change. I smiled more. I made jokes in the lab. I brought donuts in on Fridays. I hadn't done that in years. One afternoon, Julia, the same coworker who had left me the chocolate sticky note after my mom's meltdown, walked past my desk. You look like a guy who finally exhaled, she said. I laughed. Yeah, I guess I did. But of course, peace doesn't come without one last knock at the door. It came a week later, not in person, but through my voicemail. A missed call from a number I didn't recognize. The transcript preview said, Omar, this is your father. I played it once. His voice was as flat and tired as I remembered. You may think you've won something here, but you've lost more than you know. You burned every bridge. One day, when you're older, when you're alone, maybe you'll understand what it means to be a man. A real man takes care of his family, even when they don't deserve it. I hit delete before he could finish. The next day, I got a message from my aunt, who I hadn't heard from in years. My dad's older sister. Always polite. Always quiet. She wrote, Omar, I'm reaching out because I'm worried. Not for myself. For your soul. I know you've been hurt, but pushing everyone away isn't healing. I've always admired your heart. Please don't let bitterness consume it. There it was again. The twist. The insinuation that I was the one who'd become poisoned. That I was broken, not betrayed. That silence meant guilt, not growth. I thought about not responding. Then I wrote back. I'm not bitter. I'm free. What you call pushing away, I call survival. You all watched what happened to me. You watched and stayed quiet. I'm not angry anymore. But I'm not available, either. Take care. Omar. She never replied. And that was fine. A few weeks later, I finally redecorated the bedroom. Took down the old framed prints Yasmin had hung. Replaced them with my own photos, shots from hiking trips, skylines from cities I'd visited for conferences. Pieces of my life that belonged to me and no one else. On a rainy Saturday, I met a few friends for lunch downtown. Just friends. No explanations. No tension. Just jokes, sandwiches, and shared stories. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was waiting for something awful to hit. No texts from Reed. No emails from Yasmin. No guilt traps from my parents. Just quiet. Not empty. Peaceful. Because here's the truth nobody tells you. Sometimes peace doesn't come gently. Sometimes it's forged, burned out of the ashes of who you were, who they wanted you to be. And when you finally step through the smoke, you breathe. And for once, the air is yours.